After so many years, once and for all for Sergio.
And then, of course, the winning putt for Sergio Garcia yesterday at the Masters. Great finish. Him and Justin Rose playing a great back nine, and that's how we're going to start the show off tonight. Welcome back to Sports Talk. Doug Miles. Don Henderson off tonight, so I'm doing it solo, but great to welcome to start off the show tonight. Man who has been with us a few times before. Always great to have him when he puts out one of his outstanding sports biographies, and he's got a great one right now. It's called Arnie, The Life of Arnold Palmer. We're welcome to join Tom Callahan, sports writer, formerly at Time Magazine, also the Washington Post, and he joined us from a hotel room in Georgia somewhere. And Tom, great to talk with you. How are you tonight?
Hey, thanks. Good to talk with you.
Yeah, I had a chance to read through the book over the weekend. And first of all, I think last time we had you on, we've had you on for the Johnny Unitas book, and before that, I believe with the Tiger Woods book a few years ago. But boy, this is a great read on Arnie Palmer, who of course they honored at the Masters on Thursday, his first not being there in over 50 years. But you were there for the weekend, so just give us your impressions, first of all, on the tournament.
Well, I thought the most telling, or maybe it's sentimental, but the fact that it was Seve Ballesteros' would have been his 60th birthday.
Right.
He always celebrated his birthday at the Masters. When he turned 40, it was on a Wednesday before Tiger won his tournament by 12 shots, first grade Masters 20 years ago. And Seve came off he was playing a practice round. Tiger left him after 9 holes. Tiger told me that night, I said, why did you leave Seve and Jose Maria? And he said, I wanted to get away and try some of the things he'd showed me around the greens. I didn't want anybody watching. He said, if I could have, his caddy in those days was Fluff Cowan. He said, if I could have gone out without Fluff, I would have. But anyway, I thought the last round, that was absolutely a Seve bogey that Sergio made at 10, and that was a Seve par. He made it 13. Yeah, I started to wonder if Seve hadn't pushed Johnson down the steps before the tournament began. But anyway, I was happy for Sergio. He's been a problematic guy, but he's a great player.
Yeah, I got the same feeling. I remember watching him over the years, and I believe it was on Long Island when they played out at Bethpage. When he had looked like the yips on every shot on the grip. Remember, he used to do that a lot, and the fans were really getting on.
Yeah, he had that. Yeah, it used to take him a long time to pull the trigger. Yeah, they would count. The gallery started counting all the balls. Yeah. It was
Long Island New York
hard.
fans too. I'm from up there, so it was it's kind of funny in a way, but they were killing him on that. And of course, he had the situation a couple of times with I think he spit on the cup of this is years ago, kind of unsportsmanlike stuff. But I guess he seems like he's matured now, right? And do you think he has?
I think he has. He threw a shoe at an official once. He's been notorious. And he's been his own worst enemy. He's lost close ones and blamed himself. Blamed everyone, blamed the world, and screamed and hollered but he's come to peace. He's getting ready to get married in July, and he seems to be a happier person. But he's always been a wonderful player in his way. He's not he's an on-and-off putter, which most of them are. The very few had Tiger's putting gene. Rory's an on-and-off putter, but Sergio is a wonderful striker of the golf ball. And the 2 times he played 18 yesterday, both approach shots were wonderful.
Yeah, he really kind of showed. I think everybody that either may have been rooting sort of against him or thought, here we go again with the Sergio choke, but he pulled his game back on track, and even when he missed the putt on 18 where he could have won it the first time, like you said, he came through in the extra hole, and of course made that last putt pretty clear, although it kind of lipped in, but that kind of was poetic, I guess. But I guess that kind of elevates him now to maybe not Hall of Fame status, but upper level status. What do you think?
I think he's good. I think he's definitely going to be a Hall of Fame player. He won the Players Championship, which is just a rung below the majors, and he's been a factor at a lot of majors. And of course he came along in with Tiger. A lot of people forget that Phil Mickelson didn't engage with Tiger when he was Tiger. It took him 10 years to engage. Phil won his first major in his 13th season as a pro.
Right.
For a decade, poor Arnie Els was alone against Tiger. When Tiger was at the top of his game in 2000 and won the U.S. Open by 15, and a month later the British by 8, Els finished second in both those tournaments, 23 shots behind. That should have killed him dead right there. And it was sad. One of the kind of sad little footnotes of this last tournament, it's probably going to be Ernie's last. It's his last year of exemption from having won the British 5 years ago. And he played horribly on the weekend, but he was so good about it. He was himself. He came in with a wan smile and said, I played horrible. But I'm glad to have been here. I feel lucky to have played 23 Masters, and he finished second by himself twice.
Right.
So anyway, that made me sad that Ernie finished dead last among the guys who made the cuts. But as I said, I found myself pulling for Sergio, even though he's not my favorite. I don't think he's anybody's favorite except that young fiance he has.
Yeah, I didn't realize he was going to get married till they showed her on the edge of the green there. I believe she's or was a collegiate golfer. So good for him.
Yeah, she has football players in her background too.
Right.
Yeah, which has been good for him. Well, he had a long romance with Greg Norman's daughter, and she jilted him.
Is that right?
And that knocked him over for about 2 years. These guys live in the real world. There are a lot of factors going on besides the weather on the golf course.
I think he went out with Arantxa Sanchez Vicario at one time, didn't he? The tennis player, I believe.
That sounds familiar. Maybe so.
Yeah, a long time ago. Well, good for him. We wish him well and that. But let's talk about the book, Arnie, The Life of Arnold Palmer. Of course, they honored him on the ceremonial teeing off. I think they did a nice job putting the folding chair out there and the green jacket on it. I'm sure you were there. A lot of great emotion.
Well, it was sweet. I agree with you. It was very sweet. And many years ago, Palmer said to the Masters, "Why do I want to win the Masters? Why do I want to breathe?" Right. That's how important the Masters was to him. And of course, he made a lot of his history there. He won the tournament 4 times. And to me, I've always thought that the 4 most prominent golfers or people to American golf, were Arnold Palmer, Bobby Jones, Bob Hope, and Dwight Eisenhower. To me, that's the first foursome of American golf. And 3 of the 4 are basically based, have a strong connection to Augusta. But of course, Arnie most of all. I mean, Arnold, they call him the king. He kind of resisted that, but because he's like the all-time commoner. But he was certainly important to golf and to the Masters, and I thought the Masters treated him very well this last week.
Yeah, you talk about it in the book, and the kind of the confluence of when he was born, his looks, his unusual style for the time, and television coming right in the 50s. It all came together for him at that particular point.
Yes, you're right. He was delivered with the first TV sets. Before Palmer, golfers looked like sports writers, unmade beds, and Palmer looked like an athlete, a prize fighter, middleweight. He kind of had that rolling, natural slouch, and there was just something different about him. And he lived to the country club game, put it on those square shoulders, carried it to the people, and made it a sport. When I was a young newspaper guy 100 years ago, we'd be on the desk at night and the weekends, and the calls would come in. Nobody said, "Who's leading the tournament?" It was always, "What did Palmer do?"
Right.
What did Palmer do? People who didn't follow golf followed Palmer. People who hated golf loved Palmer. He was that important. Even the young players today, look, the prettiest line, one of the prettiest lines in my book, was given to me by Rory McIlroy, because he told me, he said, I was a Seve guy. The international players, Palmer was too early for me. He said, once I got to America and found out, he said, I got it completely. But I was a Seve guy. But of course, Seve was there, Palmer, but he really said he'd have still been Seve, but he wouldn't have been the same. I wouldn't have been the same. None of us would have been the same without Arnie. And Arnold, a year ago, handed him his phone number and said, if you ever need anything, call me.
Yeah.
And Rory said in return, Mr. Palmer, everything I need, you've already given me. And I said to Rory, I said, that's the prettiest line you'll probably ever say as a pro.
Yeah, I heard you tell that story before, and in the book, it's a great story. And he was that type of guy. He would sign just about every autograph. He'd look you right in the eye, shake your hand, and not slough you off. And I never heard a story about anybody saying Arnie didn't have time for me.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I go back a long way. In a way, I was kind of writing this book for 45 years. Because my first Masters was 72. And that same year, I went to a one-day tournament in Cincinnati exhibition. And that's the first time I had Palmer to myself. And I asked him, what's the charity getting and what are you getting? And his eyebrows shut up, and he said, you'll have to ask Mark McCormick, that was his agent,
right,
about the charity. I'm getting $12,000. Gary Player's getting $8,000. Everybody else is getting $1,000 apiece. Is there anything else you'd like to know? and I said, sorry. And he said, don't ever apologize for doing your job.
Yep.
And after that, I was with him a lot. Just in the natural course of covering sports, covering a lot of golf tournaments, I was in his company, and I went to see him for long pieces when he was 60, 70, and 80. And so that was a great break. And he was so considerate. Last June, when the Open was 40 miles away, and he wasn't really able to go to it at Oakmont, he had his friend and aide, Doug Kippen, call me. He knew I was at Oakmont, and he said, "Let Tom come and see me." And he wasn't seeing anybody, probably very, very, very few. And because he was a little ashamed of how frail he had become,
right,
But we sat in the Thursday of the U.S. Open last year. We sat in his office in Latrobe and laughed. He was great. He was frail, and he could hardly hear a word you said, but he was himself. He still had a sense of humor. He turned to me at one point and he said, remember when I asked you, doesn't your ass hurt from all this sitting? And we went and played golf. Well, of course, I said, Arnie, I'm not likely to forget that. But I mean, it was a great break to have played golf with Arnold Palmer, and to have been his friend, which is no great feat because everybody, with a couple of exceptions, with very few exceptions, like Ben Hogan wasn't his friend on either side. But Arnie didn't like Ben Hogan because Hogan didn't like him, and that's a mystery. But basically, he loved the writers. I sat down with him. He said, "How's Dan Jenkins?" My great friend Dan Jenkins, who's his age, and Dan was at the Masters this past week, and again, he was himself too, full of laughter, and that's what Palmer. That's one way of describing Palmer, full of laughter.
So toward the end, I mean, mentally he was still okay. It was basically his heart that kind of gave out, wasn't that what kind of was
it? It was, but he tripped about a year and a half ago, and he said he tripped on a rug. But the truth was he had tripped on his dog, Mulligan.
Right.
He didn't want us to blame his old friend, but he separated his right shoulder, and it never really healed. I went to see him at the 2015 his own tournament, Arnold Palmer Invitational, and I went to see him just to have a look at him because I'd heard he'd fallen, and he looked terrible. I mean, he just looked gray, not pale, but gray, and he never got better. And I think that was the start of his decline. You're right. He had heart issues, and he had cancer 20 years ago. He had his prostate taken out. He had a defibrillator in his heart, and he didn't think a thing of it, and he didn't think a thing of the cancer. He was a tough guy.
He was one of those guys, like some athletes, you just never thought would get old,
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's right. But he was special. There's no doubt about it, and it'll surprise a lot of people to know really how few. He won 7 majors over a 6-year period. Arnie Hell's won his majors over 18 years. Right. player over 20, Nicholas over 25. Only 6-year window. For Arnold, of course, nobody noticed because nobody wanted to notice, number one. And number two, he was still in the 100 U.S. Open for 10 years after that. Tremendous competitor. There were no mid-round compliments from Palmer. He was the first guy to say, well played, when it was over. But he wanted to win. Tony Jacklin told me that when you were playing in his company, he said the ill will he had for your golf ball came off him like squiggly lines. He wanted to beat you. And but that was a great part of him. That was, he was a guy who absolutely loved golf.
Yeah, Tony lives right in our area here. I haven't talked to him in a few years. We had him on the show, but I believe he still lives up in Bradenton. Have you seen him down here? Talk to Tony?
Who's that?
Tony Jacklin.
I'm sorry. Oh yeah, no, I haven't seen him in a long while. While I hit him on the phone, I got him on the phone because I wanted to get his voice into this.
Yeah.
And it was great. He told me about flying with Arnold. How Arnold would flip the plane over and over just to make everybody sick.
He was the kind of character as a pilot. Got away with a few things, didn't he?
He did. I guess Gary Player, who's the MVP of this book, Gary Player, almost everything he told me fit. And he said, I think the FAA was a little more lax in those days. He says, because Arnold liked to buzz golf courses. He liked to terrify Jack and Gary. In the days when they were flying with him and they were friends. Before Jack and Arnold had their differences, which they came through, by the way. They ended up loving each other. At the memorial service, Nicholas could barely keep from weeping. He barely got through his talk.
Were they became close later on, right? They were more competitors early on, but they became almost like brothers later on in life?
Yeah, they did. I confess, I've been writing this line for 40 years, but it's like God said to Nicholas, there's skills like no other, then turned to Palmer and whispered, but they'll love you more. Yeah, right. And as a result, they were jealous of each other. Arnold was jealous of Jack's ability. Jack was jealous of Arnold's love ability. And they did a lot of clashing over business deals. And when Jack became the better player, but Arnold remained a more saleable client, Jack quit Mark McCormick, the agent. Huff. And they had their disagreements, and it wasn't always kindly put. I can tell you, because I was in both of their company when they would put each other down, and it wasn't attractive, and it wasn't like them, either one of them, because they're good guys, both of them, but they came through it, and I'm going to say 30 years ago, actually, that they've been better and going to luncheons together again and playing practice rounds together again. And there's no doubt they loved each other.
I remember Arnie, just seeing some old clips, and even as a kid, I remember, he would go on Bob Hope on his specials. I think he used to go on Ed Sullivan and show Ed how to hit a golf ball. I mean, he really was the first golf TV star that was just not on sports shows. I mean, he went on variety shows.
You're right. But Bob Hope, I happened to be at an exhibition that Hope did every year with Jack Nicklaus. It was like the smallest of his charities. The two of them would play golf in Cincinnati, and they would give the proceeds, the tickets, to a little house called Hope House, which was like 12 kids, in town, orphaned kids or troubled kids. Right. And so I happened to talk with. That's the funny thing. There are a lot of things, just as a part of the life I've created, this weird life I've led. A lot of things fit that never fit before. Talking to Tommy Bold or talking to Billy Casper, a lot of other guys who are dead who fit in this book because because I've been with them, and I actually had a long conversation with Bob Hope in Mason, Ohio, near Kings Island once, in which we talked about Palmer. They were friends. Palmer told me, he said, he played the British Amateur. He got beat by somebody named Fox. And then Arnold looked at me and said, "Don't ask me how I remember that." But of course Arnold remembered everything. He was like his fellow Pittsburgher Unitas. Unitas, was incredible, his memory. But but Arnold's the same way. You know, Arnold had a great memory. He could tell you the first round he ever played at Bay Hill, or when he could tell you the shot by shot, practice rounds. It was amazing.
Almost like Ted Williams. I think you'd ask him in an interview. I've heard somebody struck him out in 1953, and he said, "Oh yeah, curveball low and away." I mean, he had that kind of memory like Williams.
Yeah, I had good luck with him because when I'd go to Winter Haven as one of the stops in spring training, and Williams would always be there. And unlike Sandy Koufax or Al Kaline or other guys who were there in uniform, with their teams, he was always there looking like a fisherman. He always had a colorful shirt that wasn't tucked in. He never dressed up as a baseball player. And it was hard to interview. I interviewed him several times. I said I had good luck with him. I liked him, and I think he liked me. That's Dan Jenkins' old criterion. He said I like people who like me. But Williams would interview you, so you couldn't really get the quality you wanted out of him because he kept interviewing you. And I can remember once because I grew up in Baltimore, and he said that, "You're from Baltimore, right?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Tell me about Unitas. You know Unitas." I said, "Well, I've talked to him, but I can't say I really know him." This was early on. I came to know him. But Williams said, "Well, let me ask you something. If there's if Unitas is standing at the line getting ready to take a snap, and one side of the stadium bursts into flames, what does he do?" I said, "He runs the play." He says, "That's God-given. That's God-given." And I realized afterward we were talking about Johnny Unitas, not about Ted Williams. That's the way he was. But smart guy, and as I say, by my lights, a good guy. So I knew a lot of writers who hated him.
Something about those Western Pennsylvania guys, right? The quarterbacks and Arnie and.
I think, boy, you're so right. Yeah. And also like Art Rooney. The owner of the Steelers. He was the same kind of guy. Yeah. He had been a wonderful athlete, amateur athlete, played against Jim Thorpe. Was signed by two Major League Baseball teams wanted him. He could have boxed in the Olympics, but his mother asked him not to. But he was the same kind of sweet guy. But he would say to me, I'd be in the dressing room on a Saturday interviewing, Bradshaw or somebody, and I'd get a tap on the shoulder, and it'd be old Mr. Rooney, and he'd say, "Are you on a tough deadline?" And I'd say, "No, not particularly." "Well, when you finish, come down to go through the back door of the locker room, turn left, come to the end, and that's my office. I'll give you a cup of coffee." And I would sit with him like all the sports writers would, and he would never talk about the Steelers, but he'd always talk about Billy Conn, his friend, the fighter. He was just that kind of guy. And so, I agree with you. I think there's something about Western Pennsylvania guys. Beano Cook was a Western Pennsylvania guy, and Beano was the same kind of guy.
Yeah, great character. Well, this book, again, nobody didn't like Arnie. I can tell you that from reading the book, and just if you ever saw him play, or I really didn't have any personal contact with him, but just the interviews I've watched him and watching him play a little bit later on. It was a little bit before my time, but I always enjoyed him. And Arnie, The Life of Arnold Palmer is the name of the book. Tom Callahan has been our guest. And Tom, I know you've been doing a lot of these interviews. I appreciate you taking the time tonight. Do you have a website you want to direct people to? I know it's in all the bookstores.
No, I'm from another century,
I have to ask.
The book's for sale for Amazon and all those things, which I don't understand or know anything about. But yeah, I'm people ask me things like that. Like I'm Twitter illiterate.
It's a required question now to ask about the website, but I know it's in all the stores. No. Anybody can find it. Just look it up there. But
yeah. It's I shouldn't. The funny thing is, nobody believes me when I say this, but I didn't write this book for money. And it sounds arrogant, but I don't really care if it's a big sell. I hope people who do read it enjoy it because I enjoy doing it. It's like. Labors of love don't really. You don't need the commerce. I'm sure that my publisher. They hate to hear this. I tell them. I tell them the same thing every time. If it's good enough, it'll sell. If it's not good enough, if it doesn't sell, it wasn't good enough. And it's been out for 6 days and doing nicely. I'm told, but I don't follow it.
That's why I
probably
I
should.
don't do this for the money either. Believe me.
Yeah, that's why you're good at it. I mean, that's the thing. That's the deal. You have to, you wouldn't do it for nothing because you have to make a living.
Close.
Neither would I. I wouldn't write for nothing either, but it's not why I do it.
Well, Tom, always great to catch up with you, and I know you probably have another subject in the works. I know you probably can't say who it is, but when it does come out, we'll definitely have you back on then. But in the meantime, get Arnie, The Life of Arnold Palmer, and Tom Callahan, thanks for being with us tonight.
Hey, it's good to you, and I always enjoy talking.
Great. Thank you, Tom. We'll
Cheers.
talk to you soon. Tom Callahan, our guest, and again, please check it out. I got it on Friday and read pretty much the entire book in really 2 sessions, and only because I had to go eat or go to sleep. But it was a great read, and really some wonderful stories in the book about Arnie, who had a colorful life, to say the least, not only on the course but off. Tom talks about that in the book as well. Nothing sordid, but Arnie did enjoy himself, so I think people will get a kick out of those stories, maybe a little surprise here and there as well. And we wanted to have Tom on tonight, so we appreciate him taking the time. Still in a hotel up in Augusta, Georgia. Of course, he covered the Masters, as he told you. And we'll definitely look forward to having him on again. We had him on. I looked at the archives. We had him on, I can't believe it's that long ago, 2010, when he wrote the book about Tiger Woods and his dad. And the Johnny Unitas book came out just about maybe a little bit after that as well. Maybe before, I'm not sure. But we've had him on a few times, and we'll look forward to having him on again. Again, Don Henderson off tonight, but glad to be with you doing a solo as we talk to Tom Callahan. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you again real soon here on Sports Talk. Thanks for listening, everybody.